Look at her trying to eat, one boy sneered, slapping the plate out of Emma's hands. Pancakes flew across the floor, syrup splattering like a cruel painting. Another shoved her wheelchair back, the wheels clattering against the tiles. Emma froze, choking on humiliation, tears threatening to spill. Hey! An older man barked from across the diner, rising from his seat. He grabbed the plate gently, setting it back in front of her. Don't let them bother you, he said, voice firm but calm, his eyes scanning the row of teenagers. Emma nodded silently, biting her lip, desperate to shrink into herself. The diner was tense, everyone watching but too timid to act. Emma bent awkwardly, her hands trembling as she tried to gather her ruined breakfast. She had learned to move through the world carefully, to keep her strength hidden beneath a fragile calm. A spinal condition had made her reliant on the wheelchair, but her spirit had always fought to rise above it. Still, this cruelty, was a sharp reminder that kindness sometimes feels invisible. The boys laughed, louder now, enjoying their dominance. Emma's throat tightened. She wanted to shout, to demand justice, but she only whispered a silent prayer for the hour to pass. A distant rumble interrupted the tension, low at first, then growing. Heads turned toward the windows. Engines roared like a rolling storm, chrome flashing under the morning sun. Dozens of motorcycles filled the parking lot, the riders' leather jackets emblazoned with a symbol that made the diner fall into uneasy silence. The leader, a tall man with streaks of silver in his hair, dismounted and strode inside. That's enough, he said, voice deep, commanding. The boys shrank back, their laughter dying in their throats. Emma felt a flicker of relief, a strange warmth in the pit of her stomach. These strangers, outsiders in every sense, had stepped in where no one else dared. The older man returned to his seat, giving Emma a small, reassuring nod. She met his gaze, swallowing hard, and for the first time that morning, felt the world tilt toward justice, not cruelty. Hours later, Emma still trembled slightly, but she smiled. She had faced the worst of it, and kindness, in its unexpected forms, had fought back. The diner door swung open, and the bell's jingle seemed to echo longer than usual. Conversation died instantly. Boots thudded against the tiled floor as a line of bikers stepped inside, leather vests marked with patches that carried a weight of reputation. The air shifted, heavy, tense, like a storm rolling in. The first man through was tall, broad-shouldered, his beard streaked with silver and his eyes sharp as steel. Another followed, then another, until the booths seemed smaller and the walls closer. The group didn't need to speak. Their presence alone silenced the smirks that had filled the room minutes earlier. The boys who had mocked Emma sat stiff, pale, trying to shrink into the vinyl seats. Their bravado evaporated in the charged quiet. The leader's gaze swept across the room, lingering on the teenagers long enough to make them squirm. Then, unexpectedly, his eyes softened when they fell on Emma. She felt her breath catch, her pulse hammering in her chest. For the first time that morning, she didn't feel invisible. She didn't feel weak. She felt noticed, protected. He walked toward her slowly, each step deliberate, the sound of his boots grounding her in the moment. When he reached her side, he crouched down, lowering himself so his eyes met hers directly. His expression carried no pity, only respect. Emma's trembling eased, just a fraction. The man finally turned his head toward the bullies. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. The steady, measured words he spoke carried enough power to drain the color from their faces. Emma couldn't make out every sentence, but she saw the effect as clearly as the sunlight streaming through the window. Shame weighed on them, heavy enough to bend their shoulders. One by one, they slid from the booth, eyes fixed on the floor, stumbling toward the door without a trace of their earlier swagger. Outside, the motorcycles formed a solid wall of chrome and steel, a gauntlet that ensured the boys' retreat was nothing short of humiliating. They avoided every glance, every whisper, and vanished down the street with their heads bowed. Inside, the leader wasn't finished. He called the waitress over and pulled a folded bill from his vest, laying it flat on the table. "Whatever she wants," he said, his voice deep but kind. "Bring her pancakes, pie, a shake. Bring her everything." The waitress nodded quickly, her eyes shining. Then, in a moment that silenced the diner even further, the man slipped off his own vest. The weight of it seemed immense, not just in leather, but in meaning. He placed it carefully around Emma's shoulders. The material hung heavy on her small frame, but the gesture lit something inside her. "Your family now," he said simply. Tears blurred Emma's vision, but these weren't the tears of humiliation that had stung her earlier. These were tears of belonging, of being lifted when she had felt lowest. The strangers who looked so fierce, so untouchable, had shown her the gentlest kind of strength. Soft applause rippled through the diner. Some patrons stood, others dabbed at their eyes. The waitress leaned down, hugging Emma gently, whispering that she'd never sit in that diner feeling invisible again. Emma held the vest tighter around her shoulders, her chest rising with a deep, steady breath. She understood now. Cruelty existed, yes, but so did courage. And sometimes the most unlikely people were the ones to remind you that your story didn't have to end in pain. That morning, what began in shame ended in hope. And Emma knew she would never forget the moment the storm walked in and rewrote her world.